Hey everyone, Ian here at the start of the episode with a couple of notes. First off, despite Hurricane Helene's best efforts, James and I and our families are safe. Most of the damage caused by the storm locally was far to the south and west of us, in towns like Irwin and Unicoi, as well as just across the mountain in the greater Asheville, North Carolina area. Today, I heard a report that the Nolichucky River, which is the river that flows through Irwin, crested at a record 30 feet above flood stage, breaking the previous record of 24 feet set back in 1901. It washed away the bridges that carry Interstate 26 past town and into North Carolina, along with a lot of other infrastructure in town, and it left Unicioi's 2-year-old brand new hospital standing in floodwater up to the eaves of the roof. While there are national charities like the American Red Cross working on disaster response throughout the Southeast, if you wanted to help Eastern Tennessee specifically, this region that James and I call home, you can donate to the East Tennessee Foundation's Neighbor to Neighbor Fund. This is a fund that is a regional organization that allocates money exclusively to local philanthropic organizations. So these are groups within the communities helping their communities. I've put a link to their donation page in the show notes. The second part is that this episode is coming with a content warning. Once we get into the character creation portion near the end of the episode, starting at around 39 minutes, there is some discussion of bullying and emotional and domestic abuse. There isn't anything specific or graphic, but it may be enough to trigger some individuals, so we figured we'd be upfront about it. Stay safe, everyone. We love you all. Enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to Undercommon Taste. This is a podcast where we create and discuss homebrew content for tabletop RPGs.
I don't believe in Peter Pan, Frankenstein, or Spider-Man. All I want to do is ride my bicycle.
I'm Ian Woodworth. I'm joined by my co-host James Daly. And
that
today,
brief moment of silence was Ian's soul dying just a little bit.
that was me trying to decide whether or not I wanted to continue on with the lyrics. Is
fair, yeah.
The biggest part of it. Yeah, so leading up into Halloween here, in November, I'm going to be running a few games at my local library, the library where my wife works. And part of the process is I'm going to be running several games that I haven't run before, just to sort of expand horizons and whatnot, because November is, I believe, International Game Month. And so they're trying to do some tabletop gaming events at the library for International Game Month. And as part of that, I have signed up to run some games. I'm running a couple of teen games on one Saturday and a couple of adult games on another Saturday.
Yeah, I like this. Again, as for the library, it's building up some community involvement. And, if you get people interested in games or storytelling or different things, it's not like, they have a giant collection of books that people could use for inspiration or borrow to get rule sets or different things like that. I think this is a really good call on the library. And again, I do enjoy the library using the games as a point of community involvement. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. So for the teen weekend, I'm going to be running a game of D&D specifically because the teens requested a game of D&D. I wasn't going to do D&D, but they requested it, and so I'm going to give the masses what they want.
That's not a bad idea. Again, it's good to know your audience.
True. And then the other game I'm going to run for them is the one we're going to be talking about tonight, which is Kids on Bikes. If you couldn't gather that from James's intro.
Now, for me, I've heard the game system Kids on Bikes. I've heard the title, but I was unfamiliar with the system, so I actually got to explore a little bit this week, kind of looking into some of the rule sets and stuff like that. And I'm not going to say it's vastly different than D&D, because, both are tabletop games, both can lean heavily.
I will say that it is vastly different, but we'll get into why later.
Yeah, both lean into fantasy, but I really think I like this. It's simple. It works. There are differences, but it's still, you're going to gather around. You're going to have the same kind of RP. I think Kids on Bikes leans more into RP than combat than D&D does. And I think this also gives more chance for more storytelling, or if you have like a scenario where you don't want the violence necessarily to shine through and be the focus of the story, I think this is a really solid option.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you on several points, but we will bring that up in a minute.
Okay.
When we actually start talking about the game. The other weekend, the adult games weekend, the two games that I'm going to be running, the first one is Monster of the Week, and we're going to be talking about Monster of the Week next episode. And then the other one is the Old Gods of Appalachia role-playing game.
Oh, I'm excited for that one.
Which runs on Monty Cook's Cypher system. And so I'm thinking that the episode after Halloween will probably be talking about that because, and we've already recorded this so I can talk about it, at Halloween we have an actual play that we're going to be running that is us playing The Lost Bay for Eco's event through October called All Flesh is Surplus. It's a combination of a game jam with a lot of actual plays and other content surrounding the Lost Bay game. Because it's a suburban gothic horror game, it is perfect for Halloween. And we had a ton of fun playing that game.
Yeah, that was a really solid, that was a great session we had.
Yeah, and I am really looking forward to getting that edited and out. It's going to be coming out on October 30th. It's the Wednesday right before Halloween.
If you're from the Mid-Atlantic, also known as Devil's Night.
So yeah, and then, like I said, we're going to do Old Gods of Appalachia the week after that. So we have 4 episodes lined up for the upcoming few episodes. But tonight, we're going to focus on Kids on Bikes. And
there are kids, there are bikes.
There are kids, there are bikes. So Kids on Bikes is a role-playing game by Jonathan Gilmour and Doug Lewandowski. It is an Emmy Award winner in 2019, which I can see why, because it's just that cool. And the primary focus is on basically being teenagers in 80s and 90s suburbia, riding around and solving mysteries.
Yeah, so when I was first reading about Kids on Bikes, I noticed a lot of people were referencing, obviously, Stranger Things. And
yeah,
I'm guessing that's where a lot of the inspiration for the game may have come from.
Yeah, Stranger Things, The Goonies.
Yeah, I was going to say, I got really a Goonies or even a Scooby-Doo feel. I mean,
yeah, there's definitely, if Scooby-Doo were a bit more serious.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Scooby-Doo, the people are teenagers, but the animation was intended more for children. If the animation was intended more towards young teens, totally would feel exactly dead on Kids on Bikes.
Yeah, and just to be clear, while I think the primary focus would be on the teenage-aged characters, there are guidelines for creating younger characters, actual children, and there are guidelines for creating adults.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say this. I want to see King of the Hill, Kid on Bikes.
Well, if I actually watched King of the Hill, that would be...
Yeah, I mean,
I know enough about King of the Hill from various memes that I can follow along, but
yeah, you'd have your basic trope of a bunch of just middle-aged dudes doing whatever, and whatever the mystery is, then trying to solve it. Talking about the thematic feel of Kids on Bikes, this almost has a good proper eldritch horror feel to it too, because the monsters, while the monsters or the event or the thing is there, from what I gathered, it's always kind of just behind a little bit of a veil, so you can kind of see it but not outright. Kind of think like Cloverfield, where there's something going on, but the actual thing, largely you are dealing with the effects of the thing rather than the thing itself generally.
Right. And that's also the vibe that you get in Stranger Things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the Lovely Craftians, whenever they were running through their first big story arc across 4 seasons, they did have a couple of instances where they had the members of another podcast come in and do some canon story building, a couple of guest episodes, and the game that they played with those guest players was Kids on Bikes. And the main storyline was Call of Cthulhu 7e. So it did fit, and it fit really well.
That is a beautiful idea. And that's, I mean, we had John from Tale of the Manticore Common, and he had his Pendulum series. But yeah, if you're playing your game and you're kind of in one of those middle sessions and you need to do some world building, run a quick one shot with a different simple rule set and use that for your world building prompt. I think that is a great idea.
So let's get a little bit to talking about the game itself. So this is where I'm going to disagree with James, because Kids on Bikes and Monster of the Week as well, which we're going to talk about next week, Kids on Bikes is not D&D.
It is not. No, I agree.
It is decidedly not D&D. D&D is very mechanical based. You have stats for everything. You have rolls for everything. You have a specific byline that you say, I want to do this thing. Okay, here is the stat that governs your ability to do this thing. Roll the die, add that stat. Here is your benchmark. And you play the game based on the stats on your character sheet.
Yes.
Kids on Bikes is a narrative driven game. It is a narrative forward game. You have 6 very abstract sort of attribute scores, and that's about it. I mean, you do have some skills that you can get bonuses for, but by and large, you have 6 stats, and the 6 stats do sort of loosely transcribe to the 6 stats that you get in D&D. But by and large, what you do is determined entirely by narrative rather than by mechanics.
Yes. Now, I agree with that. When I was trying to say when I say it's similar to D&D, as in it will be a group of you and your friends sitting down at a table, creating a world, creating a story. Now, again, as you said, D&D is very stat heavy, very stat driven, very combat focused, where Kids on Bikes is more narrative. It seems more improv heavy, which when we did our live play or actual play, that was something I noticed also with Lost Bay. As Lost Bay, it took a little bit to get out of the I'm going to play D&D mindset versus, okay, we're building a story. And so yes, and for your improv skills suited much better for that. And I think would suit much better for Kids on Bikes as well.
Yes. Well, I mean, you have to play Kids on Bikes like that because you can't play it the same way that you would play D&D. It's just mechanically isn't going to work. You're going to have a bad time if you try to play Kids on Bikes the same way you play D&D.
Very fair.
Because you don't have the min-maxing to really, optimize your gameplay. I mean, yes, you're going to have certain things that you're better at than others, and so you're going to have an incentive to focus your actions on utilizing your better skills.
Right.
But it's not the same as optimizing a build for D&D.
No, absolutely. We've discussed this many, many times, but D&D at its very foundation was a combat simulator. Kids on Bikes is a story generator. You're creating a story with that too. Another big difference is, especially with more modern takes of D&D or Pathfinder, with those you're a superhero when you do superhero things. With things like Kids on Bikes, you're just kind of an average everyday person put into an exceptional circumstance.
Yeah, you're just a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, there are rules for adding magic to the game. They refer to them as powered characters, but by and large, you're just a kid in this world, and you're trying to navigate this world in such a way as to solve the mystery, save the day, but do it in such a way that, a kid is able to do.
Right. And so a lot of your roles, your feats, your abilities are going to be, again, more like Goonies or more like Stranger Things. Can you sneak past the guard? Can you crack open a window to sneak in or sneak out? Can you bluff the person at the counter or distract the person at the counter while someone else is trying to get whatever MacGuffin is hidden in the store? These are the types of things you're going to be doing. And again, it is more for that story generation, because you will have your roles. Sometimes they'll be successful. Sometimes they'll be less successful. Sometimes success with a complication. And so again, that's where you kind of get that yes and aspect. Yeah, you can do that. And then this happens. You did that, but this caused this to happen.
Right. All right. So let's get into the little bit of mechanical stuff that you do have here in Kids on Bikes. So as I mentioned, there are 6 stats. You've got brains, which loosely transcribes to intelligence. That's your book smarts, problem solving, finding information, those sorts of things. There's brawn, which translates loosely to constitution. It's kind of a little bit of a mix between con and strength, because it is how strong you are, but it's not how good you are at fighting something, because that's the fight stat. There is actually a separate fight stat.
This is going to be, how rugged are you? Can you take a few bumps? Can you force open a door? It's kind of like, how rough and tumble is your character?
Yeah, so it's your strength, but it's also your endurance.
Yeah.
And then, as I said, fight is how good you are in combat.
How scrappy is you?
Yeah. Then there's, by contrast, flight. Flight would be your dexterity. It's how fast you are, how skilled you are at evading figurative and literal problems.
Noping out is an absolute strategy. Again, I love cowards in games. I think they are really fun to play sometimes.
Yeah, and the neat thing about flight is it isn't just physical. It isn't just your ability to run away. It is also your ability to weasel your way out of a social interaction, evade verbal traps.
Yeah, so one of my absolute favorite fictional characters is Benny from The Mummy. And Benny would have an absolutely staggering flight score. That would be his highest die roll. Like the scene where the mummy's up and he's pulling out all the medallions and he's incanting prayers in each different, tongue and thing to fit. Again, that's his mental ability to weasel his way out of a situation, not just his ability to drop and run.
Right. So the next stat is charm. Charm is basically charisma. It's your social aptitude. And then grit is the loose wisdom affiliate here. And it's how hard you are to break, whether physically or mentally. This is your resolve.
Okay.
And I would say that Benny has a very low grit score.
Yeah, absolutely. He folds at the drop of a hat. He's made of paper.
Yeah.
And talking about these scores and these abilities, this is one thing that Kids on Bike has done that I really enjoy, is you use all of the polyhedral dice, but you use each dice for each score. So instead of like, well, I have a 15 in strength, I have a 20 in brawn, whatever. It's, well, I have the D20 in flight, but I have a D4 in grit, and those are what you're going to roll when you play.
Yeah, so that's exactly where I was getting ready to go. You've got 6 attributes, and there are 6 different sizes of dice in your standard polyhedral die set. So you assign 1 die to each value. D20 is superb, D12 is impressive, D10 is above average, D8 is below average, D6 is bad, and D4 is terrible. So you are going to be terrible at something.
As you should be.
You're going to be superb at something. And it is up to you to figure out how you want to play your character, where you want to focus your energy, and what part of your character do you not really think is very important. And so that is something that whenever you're building your character, that's how you assign your dice. And we're going to do a character creation here once we get done talking through the book, so we can get more of an idea of how that all will work out.
So again, you have these dice now. Again, depending on how you're building your character or the scenario, there are different things where you can add extra rolls or extra points to your roll. But again, the dice are largely what you're going to do. So again, if you have that very brawny character who has a high strength score, and you're riding through and maybe a tree limb falls on your friend and their leg is caught under the tree limb, and you're trying to get away from whatever the creepy thing is, you would roll that D20 to see if you had enough strength to lift that branch to get your friend up and out from under the tree. Again, I didn't see exactly what they were, but there are things where you could add to score. The other thing, they call it failing forward. So maybe you roll that D20 and you still fail your roll. You get, there are called achievement points or adversity points. And then you can add these adversity points into another roll of your choice. So even when you fail your roll, you kind of build up this stockpile of extra points you can kind of throw in, because the game is designed to push the story forward.
Right. The way that adversity tokens work is if you have an adversity token, you can play it on any roll that you make and that will give you a +1 on that roll for each adversity token that you put on it. Now, there are two different types of actions. There's snap decision and planned action. A planned action means that you have time to sit down, figure out the best way to do it, take your time, do some research, lay out all your tools, make sure you have everything in order, and do it very meticulously. And when you do that, you can choose to take half of your stat roll. So like if you have a d20 in the stat that you're going to be using for this, you can choose to take 10 and just not roll and just guarantee if that will be a success. Some things are going to be more difficult and you'll have to roll on it in order to do that. But whenever you're making one of those planned actions, you can play an adversity token on someone else's action. However, when you're making a snap decision, other people cannot spend their adversity tokens on your action. Only you can spend your adversity tokens on a snap decision because it's happening very quickly in the moment, and there's no way for them to actually assist you with it.
Yeah, they wouldn't have the ability to react to it. And I think that's good storytelling.
Yeah. And another one of the things that I want to point out regarding the mechanics with the dice is that your dice explode in Kids on Bikes. So if you ever roll the max value on a die, you get to re-roll it and add it too. And if you keep rolling the max value on the die, you get to just keep rolling until you either don't roll the max value or you exceed the difficulty of whatever you're trying to do. So that means that if you have somebody who has a difficulty 10 obstacle that they're trying to overcome, and they only have a D4 in that stat, they still have a chance of succeeding. They just have to roll 2 4s and then a 2 or better on their third roll.
I like that too. And it makes where if you're rolling your lower die, you obviously have the higher statistical chance to have your dice go explodey. And exploding dice just make me happy anyway. There should be like a little bell or a sound effect whenever that happens.
Yeah. So they do have a table in the book talking about the different difficulties. So 1 to 2 is where success is basically guaranteed except in extreme circumstances. So that would be, as long as this one specific thing does not go wrong, you're going to succeed. 3 to 6 is one where it's likely for characters who aren't terrible at the thing can probably pass it. 7 to 9 is for tasks where the characters that are good at the thing are probably going to succeed, but the kids that aren't probably aren't. And some examples here because, I'm completely scatterbrained. So 1 to 2 would be a character picking up a 10-pound weight or reciting a multiplication table.
Okay.
A 3 to 6 is a lucky person drawing a non-face card from a deck or a character silently withstanding a verbal berating.
Fair. Okay.
A 7 to 9 would be convincing the principal that it wasn't you and your friends who started the cafeteria food fight, or running a message from one end of the building to another in a very short time.
Okay, I'm with you so far. These make a lot of sense, and I want the food fight scenario. I really want the food fight scenario.
So a 10 to 12 is a task where success is impressive, but completely expected for characters who are skilled at it. So examples would be a strong person prying open a heavy locked door, or a computer whiz repairing a computer quickly under pressure.
I could see that. I could see for like a middle school student dunking on like a regulation 10-foot rim. Or even through high school, someone actually completing like a full set of pull-ups. Not totally unfeasible, but strangely, a small amount of people could actually do that.
Yeah. 13 to 16 is a task where success is extraordinary, but decidedly possible for characters who are truly skilled at it. Examples are a lucky character finding the right item on the first try, or someone trained in espionage withstanding a police interrogation.
Okay. I was going to say, this would also be like trying to wheedle information out of somebody. Like if you had to get information and get the teacher to drop a hint on something and trying to apply that teacher for information, or maybe it's running a mile in under 8 minutes or under 6 minutes, perhaps.
Next is 17 to 19, a task for which success would be incredible and impressive. This too is a nearly guaranteed failure. So things like talking a police officer out of arresting you when you have clearly broken the law and have no relationship to the officer.
Fair.
Or breaking a school record in track.
Yeah, that, again, would make a ton of sense.
Yeah. And then a 20. 20 is the highest difficulty listed. They do say that if it is completely impossible, that you can go above 20 with your difficulty, which means that even somebody who has a D20 in their stat would have to have an exploding die in order to succeed. So a 20 would be a task at which only the most incredible could even possibly succeed, but if they succeeded, it would be one of the most impressive things a character has ever done.
This would be like free climbing Half Dome.
Examples would be lifting a car off of someone trapped underneath it, or solving a nearly impossible math problem just by glancing at it.
Okay, yeah, I like this. So now we're summoning Goodwill Hunting, and we get some Matt Damon in here.
Yeah, Matt Damon.
But he doesn't know.
And then when it comes to actually making your rolls, there is a table for where your result lands with regard to the difficulty. You make your roll, you subtract the target value from it, and depending on what the remaining number is, determines guidelines for how well you succeed or how badly you fail.
Okay, so like your character's in detention and they're going to try to sneak out under the desk while the teacher's like reading a notebook or something like that. And so they have to roll. What do you think that kind of roll that would be? Would that be
I would say that one would probably be in the 13 to 16 range.
Okay, so 13 to 16 on, what did we say that was? That was going to be...
That would probably be flight.
Yeah, so we've got a 13 to 16 on flight, and we roll a d10, and we pop up an 8. So let's say it was a 13. So we've got 13 minus 8. That leaves us 5. That we're 5 off the point, and then XYZ happens.
All right, so minus 5 to minus 9 is the failure is bad, but not a disaster. There will be some short-term consequences that might lead to some immediate difficulties, but nothing that the character can't handle if they focus on them. The character has tried to do or has been forced to do something beyond their capabilities, and, not surprisingly, they've failed. So the teacher just notices them trying to sneak out, and they get a tongue lashing, and maybe they get an extra day of detention because of it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, that seems perfectly reasonable. Inversely, the next character tries it, and they've got their D20 on flight, and they roll it, and is there a table for if you, like, score above the difficulty? Is it just...
Absolutely.
So let's say they rolled a 19.
All right, so that would be a plus 6. So that would be in the plus 5 to plus 9. So the character succeeds quite impressively. At the GM's discretion, the character might have some additional benefits beyond the success, but these will be slight, and only if important for pushing the game forward. So while this first character is being yelled at by the teacher for trying to get away, the second character uses that distraction as cover for them being able to just slip out of the room completely unnoticed.
No, I love that. I love how those work together. I like how the table kind of gives you different gauges of pass and fail. That sounds really good, and it feels fun.
Yeah. And so it goes from 10 plus or higher to plus 5 to plus 9 to plus 1 to plus 4 to 0. At a 0, if you roll exactly the difficulty, the character succeeds, but just barely. Decidedly, nothing surprising happens, and the player and the GM should make this success as skin of the teeth as possible.
That's like a whole Ferris Bueller type thing when you roll the exact number.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have minus 1 to minus 4, minus 5 to minus 9, minus 10 to minus 14, and then minus 15 or lower.
Ooh.
So minus 15 or lower is the failure is staggering and catastrophic. There will be both immediate and long-term consequences for this failure above and beyond what might be expected. These consequences might lead to serious changes in the course of the long-term arc of the story, especially because the characters should only find themselves failing this badly through total recklessness or because the GM has purposefully put them in a staggeringly difficult situation.
This is your character is cooking and now there's a kitchen fire. And your character says, I'm going to try to put out the fire, and they roll something terribly low. So as the DM,
Yeah.
you grab a giant cup of water and just dump it on the flames, and now hot fire and oil splatter everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is I have my D20 in brains. I know how to cook. I am excellent in cooking. I'm going to cook this big fancy meal for 30 people by myself in this kitchen. And yes, the grease fire happens. And for whatever reason, because of all of the extra, chaos, maybe you didn't notice it initially and you just let it go for a minute because you were trying to put out this other figurative fire elsewhere as you're trying to, get food plated and ready and out the door. And so you turn around and you realize, uh-oh, I have a grease fire going, and you roll your D20 and you roll a 1.
Yes.
And let's just say that it was a difficulty 16 because of everything else going on. You rolled a 1. That is a minus 15. So you panic and you grab that cup of water and you throw that cup of water onto that grease fire, not thinking about the fact that it's a grease fire, because that's what the 1 is.
Yeah.
And so you now have set the entire kitchen on fire. It is spreading. You've got panicked people. The sprinklers are going off, which is only making things worse because it's throwing more water onto a grease fire. And it's just bad.
Yeah.
And, the house ends up burning to the ground. It's just going to be staggering and catastrophic.
As it should be. As it should be. I love it.
Yeah.
That, or you serve, a beautifully cooked Pittsburgh blue chicken breast.
We don't joke about these things, James. We do not. Absolutely not. No. So one of the other big differences between Kids on Bikes and D&D is that combat is something that should not be common in Kids on Bikes, mainly because they're kids.
Yeah.
These aren't like trained soldiers. They're not intended to, be engaging in physical combat with the things that they run into. Kids don't typically get away with beating up the principal with baseball bats.
Not normally, unless you're doing a whole Clockwork Orange thing, but that's completely different.
And he didn't get away with it either. James.
No, he really didn't. No, Alex did not. But generally, you might have encounter with a schoolyard bully or maybe a nefarious merchant of items on the street corner. That's probably going to be as combat intense as things get.
You get cornered by an angry dog.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Because again, while this game can be and often is a horror game, the horror is always kind of just behind the veil. And so whatever that thing is affects the world around it and causes things to happen. So your characters probably aren't going to be fighting the mummy or the alien or the eldritch horror or whatever it is. They might encounter it, they might see it, they might have to escape from it, but they're not going to go toe-to-toe.
Yeah, and this is another way that it really feeds into that sort of eldritch horror feel, is that the horror is generated by them being exposed to things beyond their control, beyond their scope of ability to really change. And so they have to figure out how to work around those things and not confront them head on, because they don't stand a chance if they do confront them head on.
Right. So something like this, I mean, I don't know. I have not seen a list of monsters, but, things E and I have talked about at different points, but like a rogue semi-sentient or even a fully sentient AI is tweaking the town. And the group of kids are either living this or they're trying to figure out how to escape the influence or how to shut down potentially the AI. They're not going to go fight the giant Alexa in the corner, but they're going to have to figure out how to maneuver and work around the machinations of this AI.
Yeah. Now, with all that being said, there are still guidelines for whenever you do have to engage in combat, because it can come up. Basically, what happens is if you are the aggressor, you make a fight check, and then whatever you're fighting against makes a brawn check. And then you compare those two numbers to see how the results go. So if the defender meets or beats the attacker's roll, the defender gets to narrate the outcome and comes out uninjured.
Okay.
if the attacker beats the defender by 1-3, the attacker explains how they attack, and the defender narrates what they do to mitigate the harm. So the defender does get hurt, but it's temporary and it's not very threatening. So that's like they get punched and it staggers them a little bit, but they're able to shake it off and get back in. If the attacker succeeds by 4-6, the attacker explains their attack, the defender explains how they respond, and the attacker explains how the defender barely mitigates the attack with whatever they choose as their action.
So that person's there, I'm attacking, and they're blocking every punch I have with their nose.
Pretty much. Yeah. So things like the defender is fairly hurt and they may need medical attention. So like things like, they maybe get hit and they're now concussed, or they have bruised ribs. They're just not going to be at full form for a couple of days.
Okay.
Attacker succeeds by 7-9. Attacker explains the attack. Defender explains their defense. The attacker can alter any of those details as the defender explains them. And then the attacker explains how the response fails to mitigate the attack.
Oh, okay. I like that. So like I'm going to block with this. Well, as you blocked, I kicked you in the shin and I distracted you, and then I did XYZ.
Right. This results in the defender being pretty severely injured. So things like they get shot, like they take the full shot into the chest sort of thing. Okay. Or, they get knocked unconscious and are probably going to have a real bad concussion whenever they finally come to. Or they have broken bones.
I was going to say, this is where
break their arm, break their leg, that sort of thing. Something that's going to take them out of commission for weeks.
Fair, yeah. No, that makes total sense.
And then finally, if the attacker beats the defender's roll by 10 or more, the attacker has full control over the narrative. They explain what the defender does in response to the attack and how ineffective that response is. And the result is that the defender is either dead or very nearly dead.
Okay, and this is where the baseball bat or something like a tire iron or a chain or a gun would come in.
The examples that they give are the bullet hits them between the eyes and nothing can save them, or they're beaten so badly that only immediate medical attention can help, but there will be permanent side effects.
Okay.
So you're talking about they're getting beaten so severely that if they manage to survive, they're going to have to go through months of physical therapy to even be able to walk somewhat normally again.
Okay. So like you kick them in the knee and you tear tendons or something like that.
This is like if you wreck your motorcycle at 70 miles an hour.
Yes.
That's what it is. You slide across the road and you slam into a light pole.
In your road pizza.
Yeah. They scrape up the bits and pieces of you, and you end up wired together like some big arts and crafts project in the hospital in the full body cast.
Yes, I was just going to say that, thinking of like the late 80s, early 90s, the full body cast and traction.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the sort of thing where if you survive, that's where you're going to be. But yeah, and by and large, those are the rules. It is very simple. It is more guidelines than anything. You are well within your purview to follow or alter the rules as it fits the narrative. And that's, one of the things that I really like about it. It's great for a very narrative forward game.
Now, see, this is while we were doing our warm-up talks, I was telling Ian about the original Five Nights at Freddy's game. He says he's not played it yet. And I was telling him it is a very, very simple game. There's not a lot of bells or whistles. It's just you're doing the thing, but it is done exceptionally well. And Kids on Bikes feel the same. It's not a difficult game. The rules are simple. The rules are fairly elegant, and you can do a lot with them. It's like, here's the framework, have at you. But the framework is solid enough that there shouldn't be a whole lot in the way of question or ambiguity or uncertainty. It's here's how it works. Go play.
Right. So we did talk about potentially doing a character creation.
Yeah.
Just running through it real quick just to get an idea of what we got going on.
Do you want to do two separate characters or just one collaborative?
I think what we've got going on right now with where we are time-wise, I think we just have time for one. So
Okay.
I think collaboratively working on one would be good.
Alrighty.
All right, so following the character creation guidelines starting on page 9, step 1 is to select a trope from the playbook and make the appropriate character sheet. So the tropes that we have, we've got blue collar worker, brilliant mathlete, brutish jock, bully, conspiracy theorist, funny sidekick, laid back slacker, loner weirdo, overprotective parent, plastic beauty, popular kid, and reclusive eccentric. Oh, there's some more. And scout, stoic professional, wannabe, and young provider.
Ooh, those are some really good tropes. Now, while we were talking about building a character, I had in my mind a character I think I would want to make. And I would probably want to lean into the bully trope for this character. I'm feeling would fit well.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking we need a character that has like an exceptionally high fight skill, but no grit. And so they're going to try to impose themselves, they're going to try to beat up on things smaller than them. But if anything like touches them, they crumple, they go crying home to mommy.
Okay. And the bully does kind of work for that, or the overprotective parent.
Oh, yeah.
Because the overprotective parent starts out with the D20 in fight and the D4 in grit.
Oh, okay.
The bully starts out with the D20 in fight and the D8 in grit.
Grit. Ooh.
So bully has D20 fight, D12 brawn, D10 flight, or philite, because there's a typo here.
It's a fillet.
D8 grit, D6 brains, D4 charm.
It's a fillet of fish belly.
And then the overprotective parent, we got a D20 fight, D12 brains, D10 brawn, D8 charm, D6 flight, and D4 grit. So
definitely filling the Winona Ryder role in that one.
Yeah.
Ooh. I could go with either one. I will leave that one to you.
Honestly, I think that if we're... Because I want to stick to the sort of teenager vibe.
Okay.
So I think bully makes more sense.
All right, let's do it.
Of course, overprotective parent as a teenager could also work. That could be, the older sibling.
Yeah, it could.
That has to take steps to keep their younger siblings out of trouble.
Yo, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so we're starting off with the bully. We've got the D20 in fight, the D12 in brawn, the D10 in flight, D8 grit, D6 brains, and D4 charm. All right, so once you've selected your trope and your age, so we're going to be teens. Being a teen means we automatically get to add +1 to fight and brawn checks.
Okay.
As they are pugnacious and in their prime.
Pugnacious is a very fun word. I like it. Well done.
Yes. So we get +1 on our fight and brawn checks. So once you have selected your trope and your age, choose from the strengths and flaws associated with your character. Strengths are mechanical advantages. Flaws are not mechanical, but do help you develop your character's personality. 2 strengths, 2 flaws.
All right.
So the suggested strengths that are with the bully are gross, lucky, prepared, skilled at, and then you get to decide what they're skilled at, tough, or wealthy.
Oh, do we want like a rich bully? Like, what was it? Monty Max from Tiny Toons?
Maybe. I don't know.
Not feeling? Okay. What else would you suggest?
I think tough would definitely be a good one.
Well, I mean, we were thinking tough, but we were also thinking someone with low grit. I don't know if those two would counter each other or not.
I think this tough would be, they're able to put on a tough guy face at least initially.
Okay.
And if the person that they're bullying ends up cracking on that initial, they're able to power through it.
Okay.
But if it meets any resistance, it crumples like wet tissue paper.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, I'm seeing. Oh, what was the name of the bully in A Christmas Story? I'm kind of getting that feel too.
I don't remember. It's been forever since I've seen A Christmas Story. It wasn't one of my favorite Christmas movies growing up either.
Fair. Yeah. Okay, we'll let that heresy slide. It's fine. So we've got tough, and what would the second one be?
See here,
maybe skilled.
We could do skilled at something, or I kind of like gross, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. I mean,
Because they're teenagers.
they're a
And
bully. Yeah.
yeah, and let's face it, teenagers are kind of gross.
Fair. Yeah.
They're oily and they smell funny.
They got the
And
bad acne.
yeah.
Fair.
All right.
They've
So
got back knee.
they're tough and gross. So for their flaws, so likely flaws are demanding, disobedient, envious, hot-tempered, ignorant, inconsiderate, insecure, irrational, obnoxious, perverse, petty, and vindictive.
Ooh, I'm thinking insecure and demanding.
Okay, I can dig with that.
Kind of going with that whole tough facade. They're going to try to demand your lunch money, but maybe they're coming from like a poorer family, a home life type thing, and that's why. So that's all just a big front.
Yeah, and just growing up where I did here in Appalachia in Southwest Virginia, I can see this kid.
Yeah,
I can remember this kid from middle school and high school.
Yeah,
This is the kid who is a bully because this is the only way that they have, that they think, to exert any sort of control over anything in their life.
Yeah, no, I totally. Yeah, I see those people.
Yeah, and these are, I'm not trying to be demeaning or anything here. This is just what I recall. These are the food stamp kids. These are the kids on the reduced price or free lunch. These are the kids that their name's on the angel tree every year. They're wearing the old ratty,
hand-me-downs,
worn out hand-me-down NASCAR t-shirts. They've got that weird smell that sort of lingers around them all the time because their parents can't afford to buy enough hygiene products for them to bathe every night or to do laundry every day. They may not even have a washer and dryer in their house, so they have to, go out to a laundromat every other week to do the laundry. And so they may not have clean clothes.
Or they may not just have the home life where the adult's not there to...
Yes, that is also fairly common around here. So, but yeah, I remember this kid.
Okay, fair. We are summoning Ian's past.
Yeah. Especially since I'm not from around here. Despite, living here for almost all of my life, I was not originally from here. I was the other, and so I was the target for the bullies a lot in middle and high school.
I've lived here for almost 15 years now, and there is still a vast difference between a native and a transplant.
Yeah. I moved here when I was 4. I have lived here for 31 years, and I am still not from here to some people.
Right.
So yeah, like I said, I know this kid. All right, so question number 1, because there are 2 questions on the character origin card here. Question number 1, what motivates your bullying?
Again, it's that insecurity. It's wanting to exert some form of control over anything where they can't exert it anywhere else.
Okay. And then question number 2, how do you feel when you hurt others?
Powerful. Like you can control things. So again, it's almost, you feel in control. You feel like you have authority.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So once we have done that, what is our character's first name going to be?
Oh,
I do not need to be answering this question
because
I will give an actual person's name.
Fair. Again, we are dredging up some traumas here for Ian, unfortunately.
It's not really trauma. I have gone well past this. I don't give 2 shits about any of these people, but
we're going to summon the 80s Back to the Future trope, and we're going to go with Biff.
I'm going to call him Biff. Okay. So once we have done that, we introduce our character to the rest of the group, and then you answer questions about the character's relationship to the other characters in the game. And then you complete the finishing touches, which are motivations, fears, backpacks, last name, and trope-specific questions. So I guess we already did the trope-specific question.
Yeah. So we would bring Biff to the table, and then there'd probably be 2, 3, 4 other players, and they would introduce. Biff may know some people, maybe they're toadies, maybe they're people that Biff torments, maybe they are people that Biff ignores and they ignore each other just because they're not worth each other's time. But they are all thrown into the scenario for various reasons. At this point, they're not all going to meet in the tavern, but maybe they meet in the school library or during PE class or after school detention, kind of like the Breakfast Club.
So Depending on the length of time you have for character creation, you can take one of 3 approaches: the quick start, the one-sided, or the complete. So quick start is 2 minutes per player, and you decide whether your character's relationship with this character is most likely positive or negative. Then you roll a d20 on the positive or negative relationship question table, and you answer that question. And then for a character you don't know, you roll a d20 on the characters you don't know table and answer that particular question. And then once you answer that question, you mark it out so that later characters don't ask the same question.
Okay.
One-sided question is 5 minutes per player, and you start with, basically you ask one another the questions. So you would ask one from the positive side, one from the negative side for each of your characters. And then with the complete, see here, you do the same thing, and then you pass your sheet to the left, and everybody answers that question for everybody else's characters. So the one-sided question is for your relationship with one other character. The complete is for your relationship to each other character.
I like each of these. I would lean probably more towards the one-sided, but if you had more time, then obviously
And
everyone.
one-sided is the one that they recommend if you're running a one-shot.
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, too, I'm starting to get, like I said, the whole Breakfast Club vibe. Everyone's in the thing, and they kind of know loosely of each other. And so they have some preconceived notions or some opinions that have already started to form, but they don't know each other in depth really yet.
Right. So I'm going to say for Biff, let's just do a quick start question.
Okay.
Just because it is the quick one. And let's just say that the character in question is the target of Biff's bullying.
Okay.
So this is going to be a question off of the negative table. And because I happen to have my dice on the desk here, I'm going to go ahead and just roll one real quick. 12. How far would you go to avoid being alone with this character?
Now, is this asking the bullied character or asking Biff?
I'm going to say this would be the bullied character.
Okay. I would say let's go that.
Although it does say if the question doesn't fit what you have in mind for that relationship, feel free to re-roll and choose another question.
Fair.
So if we want to answer this from Biff's perspective, I would say let's re-roll it.
Okay, let's re-roll it.
Because that one doesn't. Because he has no problem being stuck in a room with the kid that he's bullying.
Yeah.
So in 18, you hurt this character years ago. Why can't you apologize? This is a better question.
Yeah, this is. Because Biff doesn't feel like he did anything wrong.
Okay.
Biff refuses to acknowledge that his hurt was either actually hurt or maybe he feels that it was deserved. Maybe he felt like this character had said something that initially insulted or hurt Biff, so Biff retaliated, maybe overly so. And so Biff feels like Biff has righteous indignation. He deserves to be hurt.
Yeah, and this calls back that feeling of, this paints such a vivid picture of who Biff is as a person.
Yeah.
And Biff's life circumstance, because that tells me that he lives in an abusive household.
Probably.
And that whenever he gets punished for something, he is of the mindset that he had to do something to deserve that because he has been told time and again that his punishment is deserved.
And it's his fault. Yeah. No,
and it's
absolutely.
his fault. And so he feels that because he did this thing to that kid deserved it. That kid was in the wrong. He is in the right. That's why he can't apologize, because he has not processed that it was wrong to do that.
We made a terrible character, Ian.
You're the one that suggested starting with a bullet. I want to point that out.
Fair.
All right. There's our one question. And now for finishing touches, we can give him a full name if we want to, or we can just leave it at Biff for now.
We'll leave it at Biff for now. I'm terrible at naming things.
Yeah. Next is the motivation. So write down something that strongly motivates you. It might not be the thing that drives all your decisions, but it should certainly drive most of them, and especially the big decisions. It could be a specific motivation, such as find my son no matter what it costs me, or impress Tom so that he'll go out with me. It could be more general, such as to look cool, or to learn. Or it could have something to do with concealing some information, such as don't let the others find out that my business is failing, or don't let my children learn that I killed their father.
Oops.
If appropriate, share these with the other players, but most likely you'll be sharing this motivation with the GM.
Again, Biff wants to be in control. Biff probably wants to escape his circumstances to some degree, but Biff is seeking control.
Yeah. Biff's motivation is just to get out of the house, to get away from his parents.
Yeah.
Or his parent, as may be the case.
Possibly, yeah.
And then fears is next. So think of what scares you. There will be some mechanical implications for that fear addressed in planned actions and snap decisions in Appendix G. In terms of role-playing your fears, of course, you will want to avoid your fears, and when faced with them, you'll behave more irrationally. Ultimately, what you fear in the game is up to you. Teens are all over the place. Some teens are still scared of the things that scare them as children, but they'll tend to be very tight-lipped about these fears. No teen wants to admit that they're still scared of the dark. Often, though, teens are more scared of social isolation, losing friends, or embarrassing themselves. But sometimes more mature teens, or ones whose lives have been rough, will have fears more like an adult's.
Again, Biff fears his parents and getting in trouble with his parents, or whatever is the parent's trigger. He's afraid of triggering that.
Yeah. Okay, and then the final finishing touch is the backpack. The final finishing touch is indicating what you have in your backpack, literally and figuratively. What items are you never without? For children or teens, these might literally be in their backpacks. For adults, these could be in the trunk of their car. Ultimately, though, they're wherever would make the most sense to you. So, figuratively speaking, the backpack is also a good place to list the advantages that you have over other people. While this doesn't have to consider all the ways in which you are privileged, it would be a good place to think about the more intangible resources at your disposal. For example, Azra's backpack may indicate that her parents are exceptionally supportive and do everything they can to give her the resources to succeed at school.
I think we just found the person that Biff is bullying.
Adewale's backpack, on the other hand, might indicate that he has a bad relationship with his parents that has given him a strong sense of self-reliance and ability to do for himself. The intangible resources in your backpack won't have a mechanical impact on the game, but they should give you places to turn if you need help getting out of a problem, or create tension if that resource is suddenly not available.
So obviously we've built up. Biff's going to have a good starting bluff. He's going to have that ability to intimidate. Actual things in the backpack, I'm thinking like maybe he has like some alcohol he's stolen from the house, or maybe cigarettes that he keeps.
He absolutely has a Bic lighter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Or even a Zippo maybe.
No, that's
okay. Too much?
That's too much. That costs too much money. This is the 80s, 90s. You can get a Bic lighter for $2 at the gas station.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So he's got the bluff. He's got the Bic lighter. Probably has... I'm thinking like maybe a small collection of rocks to like throw out windows or passing by cars or something along those lines. Spray paint.
I don't think spray paint. I think he has Sharpies.
Sharpies? Okay. Yeah, Sharpies. Okay.
He has a black Sharpie and a silver Sharpie.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay.
He's got like this big old pile of crumpled up papers, like, handed back assignments and stuff that have just settled to the bottom of his backpack that he's never taken out.
Yeah.
So it's this rat's nest of notebook paper just settled in the bottom 2 inches of his backpack.
Absolutely.
And this backpack is the rattiest looking backpack. It's like got one strap that's barely holding on and the other strap is held together with safety pins.
Okay. Yeah, we've built a very visceral character. I'm definitely feeling some Biff. Biff is a terrible person, and perhaps Biff can do some growing or have a redemption arc in this story. But we have definitely built a Biff.
And his backpack has a broken zipper.
Yes, of course.
So it's always hanging open. So one of those safety pins is actually holding it shut. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Good deal. Yeah. No. Absolutely.
So yeah, that is character creation. And I think we managed to do it in, 25 minutes real time with us, having to flip through the book and figure out what we're going to do. It's probably going to get compressed a bit in editing, and that's it. That's really it. And now we have a character that is fully fleshed out and realized and ready to play the game with.
Yeah, no, I mean, if I was given this character, I could work a lot with this character. There is a lot of story we built in. There's a lot of aspects. There's a lot of stuff to work with this framework. Again, just the simplicity of the game. It is very simple, but very, very elegant as how well you can construct a character and build a story with just, again, 3 or 4 characters, throw them in the soup, and there you go.
Yeah. So, like I said, this is going to be the first of the 2 games that I run. Actually, this is going to be the second of the 2 games that I run for the teens on my teen Saturday running for the library. The other one is going to be a D&D 5e game because that's what they requested. And I'm really looking forward to that. I was going to pre-gen some characters, but now that we've gone through and actually created a character here, I think that I might just let them create their own characters.
Yeah, I think
it's not going to take a terribly huge amount of time, and it will give that player exactly what they want to play.
Yeah. And I think, too, as the other players are there, and if they're listening to the other characters create their characters, they can build their own tie-ins. And I think that's more playable than here's a bunch of pre-gen characters, which are great at times. But
yeah, I think this game specifically needs that player buy-in of the player building their own character. I don't think...
Yeah.
Can you do this with pre-gens? Yes. But with as simple and quick as character creation is, I think that it would be a much better game to let them create their own character.
Yeah.
So that's Kids on Bikes. I am really looking forward to running that, and I will let everybody know how that goes once it's been run. I think that's the second Saturday in November.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'll be the 9th. So somewhere around Thanksgiving, you should hear at least a little bit on how that went. As I said, next episode, we're going to be talking about Monster of the Week.
Huzzah.
Monster of the Week is a Powered by the Apocalypse game. In my opinion, probably one of the best known and most popular Powered by the Apocalypse games. At least that's how it feels. And I'm really excited to dive into that one. We are going to be recording it tomorrow as of recording this. So, and that is, of course, assuming that Hurricane Helene allows us to record tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to be getting a whole lot of rain and wind overnight. So,
and the power might go poof.
The power might go poof, and the internet might go poof.
Yes.
So, who knows? But yeah, so thank you everyone for listening. If you have any comments, suggestions, or ideas, or if you have a game that you want us to talk about, send us an email, undercommontaste@gmail.com, or come and tell us on our Discord. You can find a link to our Discord server and all of our social media through our website, undercommontaste.com. You can also find links there to our itch page, undercommontaste.itch.io, and our Patreon, patreon.com/undercommontaste.
This is your first time listening. We're so happy you found us. You can find our other podcasts on your podcaster of choice. I also invite you to join me on Twitch. I will be streaming Darkest Dungeon on Mondays from 8 to 10 and Neverwinter's Nights on Thursdays from 10 to 12.
And that is on twitch.tv/undercommontaste. So stay safe, everyone. Enjoy your spoopy season, and we will see you again next time.
Happy gaming.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Undercommon Taste. Our theme song is Massacre Ann, written and performed by Mary Kroll and used with permission. You can find Mary online at marykroll.bandcamp.com or on Patreon at patreon.com/Dr. Mary C. Kroll. Our logo is by David Sutherland. You can find more of David's work on deviantart.com/David Sutherland or on instagram.com/Willex_73. We'll be back in 2 weeks, so stay safe, and we'll see you then.